took me spinning in his fancy cars. He taught me strumming on Balinese guitars. But then I noticed, after all he said, he never mentioned love. He had me laughing on a Ferris wheel, a childish moment that set my heart a-reel.
Welcome back to Canada Now with Jeff Sammut. Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
Well, she's an actor and one of Canada's leading and most beloved jazz vocalists with a career spanning 4 decades. Her new album, Off the Carousel, is out tomorrow. June Garber joining us on Canada Now. Hey, June, good to have you on the show.
Hey, Jeff, it's wonderful to be here.
Well, thank you for taking some time. Yeah, thank you. And look, we just heard the lead single, He Never Mentioned Love, coming in, and it's lovely. It's transcended. Congratulations on just a tremendous effort.
Thank you so much. And you've called it such a beautiful time because it's the most glorious day, and just going to be heading out to the theater in a bit for the sound check tonight.
Oh, nice. Oh, and by the way, tonight... don't get your fans all excited because tonight's album release concert is sold out.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, it
I
is.
was so thrilled about that.
Yeah.
And it's in a beautiful theater, so it's wonderful.
How long had it been since you performed live? Maybe you have. Maybe you have returned to the stage, but how long has it been?
Well, it's been a little bit because the only concerts that I've been able to do were outdoors. So this is the first concert that I'm doing in a theater. So it's very special.
Yeah, and I would think with many of your performances, it would be much better in an intimate setting versus being outdoors, right?
Oh, totally. And it's always beautiful when you have a really warm, enveloping environment inside. And it's just exquisite because the walls are charcoal and seats are very soft Italian leather. And it's just, no, it's just perfect.
Well, and for one of your performance and your music, you got to go all in. You know, you can't go halfway. You can't be sitting on a bench. You know, everything has got to be just right. You're like for dinner, you're not lighting candles and dimming the lights and then having a bowl of Skittles. You know, you're having a good meal. June Garber is in musical terms is a good meal.
Thank you. That's so lovely. Yes, the cuisine is quite tasty.
Well, and you know, looking at this album, like your track list doesn't commit itself to just the jazz genre. What went into choosing the material for the album?
Well, it's very important to me, Jeff, that when I choose to sing a song now at this stage of my life, that there's something that's meaningful and connects to my heart and soul. So each particular song that I chose was meaningful to me and brought back some memory of where I was, what I was doing. So, and every song has a story as to why I'm doing it. So I didn't really just stick to one genre. I just spread out and just did songs that I adore.
Yeah, and this is your 4th album, first since 2016. I'm curious, how was it to record this album, of course, during the pandemic?
Yeah, it was difficult because usually when we record albums, we do it all in one studio, and maybe the vocalist can be isolated in a booth, but you're still singing with the whole band, and you feel the energy in the room, and you push each other. Like it's a wonderful experience to record in a studio together with the musicians. But because of COVID, everyone had to send their tracks into Lou Pamanti, and he had to put them all together. So, but it turned out so beautifully. I was amazed.
Yeah, I mean, your name is on the album, of course, but it really does feel like a collective effort that doesn't sound disconnected at all. So congratulations on that as well. I want to go back June to 1975. So you leave South Africa and you come to Canada, and I'm curious how that experience was.
Well, South Africa has a place in my soul because it's the most beautiful country in a topographical sense. It's so diverse and beautiful. But the culture was not at all diverse. So everything was separated. And I found it very difficult to live in that environment. So I chose to leave in 75 and come to Canada. And it was a huge shift. I mean, a total paradigm shift. And it took me a long time to kind of get acclimatized to the Canadian winters. But the life here is so beautiful, and I feel so fortunate, to have had the chance to start somewhere else in an environment that was beautiful.
Yeah, you sound a lot like my dad in that he would always tell me about when he came to Canada in the mid to late 60s, and he arrived in December, and he came from Malta, which is just under Italy, and it's usually very hot in Malta. And he came in the middle of December, and he remembers sitting on my grandparents' porch and just looking out and just seeing nothing but snow. And he just said to himself, "I've made a huge mistake. What am I doing?" But then as time went on, he said it was the greatest decision of his life to come to Canada. Well, I think that's also in part because he followed my mom here. That's what love does. And he ended up having all of us, me and my brother and sisters. So you say I'm always curious about that experience from coming from one country to Canada, and relating it to my folks. Now you would come to Canada. You'd come to Toronto. You join a Toronto-based band as a backup singer, and would later form your own 8-piece band. Musically, how long did it take to get your footing and to join that band as a backup singer and then to form your own?
Well, it took a while because I had no connections here musically or otherwise, and so I worked, in little jobs that I could get because I was a school teacher, and in 75 they weren't hiring teachers anymore, so I couldn't become a teacher. And so I did odd jobs, and then I saw this advert in one of the newspapers, and it said singer required. So I went off and auditioned, and that became a beautiful ride. And then when the lead singer left the business, I took over and then kept going. And so we cracked the U.S. market. So I was working pretty much, I'd say, 11 months of the year.
Yeah, because you'd play a number of concerts in Canada and the U.S., as you mentioned. You'd have long runs in Toronto and in Vegas and Atlantic City. I'm curious, how was that?
Being on the road is not easy, and there are lots of things as a band leader that you have to take care of and make sure everyone's sort of realizing what's at stake if they don't do the right thing, So it was difficult to keep everybody in check and, be aware of the sound and the lights. But by the time we got to Vegas and Atlantic City, they had their own sound system, lighting. So it became good, but difficult, because you finish your shifts round about 2 in the morning, and then, everything's kind of turned around. So it was fascinating, though, but, difficult.
Yeah, well, to have had such a nice run there, and then you would take a break from show business. Like, did you want to live a quote-unquote normal life for a while?
Well, after I came off the road with singing, from the singing tours, I started doing theater in Toronto, and that became another animal. It just morphed into this whole new world of touring with theater groups and playing theaters around Canada. And by then, it was like really hard to just exist, with a partner who wasn't in the business and was left behind to cope. So I understood that. I understood how difficult it was for him. So I did leave the business completely.
You came back and you'd start your jazz career in 2003. So at that point in your life, what would have prompted that?
I had to have my creative urges fulfilled again. I couldn't not do it. So I planted this beautiful garden. I did entertaining and cooking and painting, but it just didn't work that much. So I had to get back to singing. And at the time, I was introduced to some jazz musicians, and that was my starting point in 2002, but didn't do much. And then just got to know wonderful players, wonderful people, and that became another ride.
Being off stage for that long, before 2003, and not performing, because there's just such a high that comes from being on stage, sharing your gift. I'm not gifted, so I don't know what that is about, but I know what being on stage is all about, and it feels so good. And like I always look at that time and say, geez, I wish I could bottle it and walk around with it. Like I used to perform on stage doing comedy, and I'd only get to do it about once, twice a week, and I for about a half hour at a time, whatever it is. And I just wish it was so short. It was such a small amount of time, and I wanted to feel that high all the time, and you can only get it, I felt, by being on stage. To do without it in that period of time, I'm sure there were other things that kind of filled your buckets, but as you talked about being fed creatively, what about from a performer standpoint in not being able to perform during that time?
Well, you're so right, Jeff, because the feeling and the endorphins released during performance, live performance, and even sometimes in the studio, but mostly for me it's live performance, that connection that you have, number one, with the musicians who are on stage. That is so vitally important. And then you have the audience, so that it's like you get that beautiful gift of what the musicians are creating, and then you share it with the audience. So it's like a beautiful triangle, and that connection is what gives you that incredible high when you're sort of emotionally moving other people. And so when you're not performing, you're so right, it's just like a normal sort of everyday thing. So that was what drove me absolutely nuts, that I didn't have that, when I stopped singing.
I would imagine you would have missed it so much. Now, you're so supportive of the younger jazz artists that are coming along. How is it for you to be around these artists and to help them out?
Well, I love being around young people, and most of the musicians now around me and the young singers coming up are at a lot of concerts that I used to do and will be doing again, that it's mostly all younger people. And I love their energy. I love that it's the beginning of their journey. But in a way, I feel bad because they don't have the gigs, the long gigs that I had. So it's all broken up into little tours, or sometimes big tours, and that's what they're going to have to go through. And I just love this fresh new talent, and they're awesome. So that's what brings me joy now.
Yeah. Well, check out JuneGarber.com and her new album, Off the Carousel, which is out tomorrow. June Garber, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy your show tonight, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And you have yourself a beautiful day.
Oh, likewise, June. Thank you very much. JuneGarber.com, the new album, Off the Carousel.